Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
I'm going to keep my big VA, keep my friends the same. Keep the government out of my business, and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need. We know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA, and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon the finest first, those who truly understand it. Freedom shivers a cold shadow of true power. It's always the patriots. Difficult. Walk liberty is it's not. The siren sounds first in our hearts of free vanguard. From that simple hope to find the fire and fight. That symbolizes the full measure of human dignity and liberty.
Remember real clear years ago in the swamps of South Georgia? Cane bowl and crossing in my hands, all I needed to be growed up. Homemade ice cream and barbecue and the family on Friday nights. 10-lane ramp on Saturday right before the morning light. There came a time I was old enough and I learned about the gun. And every night at summertime I answered what I'd done. Today what we got about the way it used to be. They got no respect and no cold steel, just games on TV. I'll burn in hell before I sell my rights away from me. It's high time we embrace the tool that keeps all men free.
Good morning, Revolution Radio listeners. The sun is rising across this very United States, and that means it's straight from the heart of Texas. It is time for Clayton Douglas, the Free American. Take it away, Clayton.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Show. I am your host. I am Clay Douglas, and there's a couple of things I want to talk about. My guest today is Stu Webb, and Stu's got quite an insight into the New World Order, the Israel and Israel's control over it. We'll be talking all about that later, but a couple of things just popped up on my internet today, and I think it's important. I think it's important that you need to be aware of it. Now, what I've told you over the years is that every time a communist regime takes over a country, they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers first because they don't want you to be able to feed yourself. They like corporate farms. I think that's plank number 9. They go after the intelligentsia next, anyone that's smart enough to know what they're planning and what they're doing.
And third, they go after the veterans and the law enforcement that are still loyal to the old regime. This headline hit me this morning. Farmer faces jail time over raw dairy sales. The trial of Wisconsin dairy farmer Vernon Hershberger recently began at Sauk County Courthouse. Hershberger's farm was targeted by the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection for supplying a private buying club with raw milk and other fresh produce. Hershberger is charged with 4 criminal misdemeanors that could result in a jail sentence of up to 30 months. The criminal trials centering around raw milk are scheduled to take place in both Minnesota and Wisconsin this year. CDC data shows that there are about 412 confirmed cases of people getting ill from pasteurized milk each year, while only about 116 illnesses a year are linked to raw milk. Research by Dr. Ted Beal show that you are about 35,000 times more likely to get sick from other foods than you are from raw milk. If the FDA and state agencies are allowed to impose their view of safe foods on consumers, raw milk won't be the only thing lost. All food will be pasteurized, irradiated, genetically engineered. The effort to reclaim our right to buy and consume raw milk is leading the way for everyone who wants to be able to obtain the food of their choice from the source of their choice. Now, I'll put a link on that later up on my site, but something else came across my desk, and that's that they found one word that defeats cancer. They've got research on cancer that shows that it's ontology, I think is what they call it, that the cancer is actually feeding off your own body and off of your own blood supply, and it can be stopped. It can be stopped, but the doctor that's done the research and the doctor that is trying to pass this information on, they're stopping it. They're stopping it. Now, Stu Webb. Hello, Stu. How are you?
I'm good, Clayton. I want to thank you for having me on. I'm always honored to be on with you.
I appreciate that. And this attack on our food, this attack on the, I'm down here in the Gulf now, and we're still recovering from that BP oil spill. That was done with an airborne laser. They got laser satellites. They got satellites with lasers. They tested it over there at White Sands Missile Range. I got to see the results on the test, and they bragged about it. Yeah, we can hit the O in God on a dime in the hands of a running man at 50 miles. So those satellites don't have to be they're not very far up. They're certainly not less than 50 miles in the atmosphere. And so that's one attack. We've got HARP. We just got probably about 150 people killed in Oklahoma when a mile-wide hurricane tore through. Now, we don't know, hard to tell whether that's natural or whether that's being created from the research, but with the medical industry, the attack on our food supplies, they are definitely, and the genetically modified food put out by Monsanto, who we can thank for Agent Orange too. This is certainly an attack on the American people. It's actually an attack on people all over the world, and I believe we're going to talk about what's going over in Syria. We've got they released a nuclear weapon called a bunker buster bomb in Syria, but they haven't made much of that on the mainstream news. And this was sent over by Israel, so this is an act of war by Israel. Russia has moved part of their fleet to off of Syria, to Syria actually, and they certainly have the weapons they've developed, the ship killer missiles that they are giving to Syria. What you've got news on that, and I believe I just saw something about that up on stewwebb.com. Can you fill us in a little bit?
Well, I'll kind of fill you in. You got a whole loaded series of questions. Let's back up for a minute.
Okay.
BP, I don't know about the laser. You probably know more than I do about that, but I know that after they did that, this New World Order, the Bush Crime Syndicate and the Zionist pigs, Bibi Netanyahu, Larry Mizell, that robbed and looted America, and Leonard Milne and Mike Sinwall, that are all part of this council of 13 devil worshippers that think that they can just take over the planet in behalf of these, I call them the fallen angels, aliens, or whatever, the gray men's empire, they call it. They're sick. They're psychopaths. They're nutcases. They're child molesters. They're, pedophilia, that is. They're killers. They're liars and thieves. Everything the devil is. Now, with that said, I noticed one thing about BP right after it happened. Besides the fact that they've run the Gulf with that Cortac or whatever they call it, dumping all that cyanide and arsenic and all the other heavy metals, to accumulate the oil and bring those two skimmers in. But they sucked up all that oil out of there, basically. And there was BP profits. I noticed that first quarter right after that went up 300,000% in that first quarter because they sucked a 10-year oil supply out of that one hole. Now, the devastation that they've done to the Gulf is unreal, because you have what's called the dead zone still floating around out there. It's been reported on. If you remember the one little girl that got fired, Amber Lyon, she made a report and went down in the Gulf and dropped down in, scuba diving and all that. But she had brought out something significant that I had been talking about previously about the dead zone, and that's a methane gas. And there's another gas that's deadly that they burn off the top of those stacks when they extract oil. Well, that gas is still floating around. There's a big dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. Part of it is broken up. They don't know how many times it has floated out of there, but in Bali, about 15 years ago, one popped up out of a lake in between several oil wells, floated downhill for like 26 miles, and everything died in its path. Anything that was on the ground, snakes, rats, dogs, cats, humans, all died for about a 4-mile path. And they couldn't figure out at first what it was. But people in that country, poor people, were standing on and sitting on top of one of those buses with a wooden rail or metal rail around it. And those people were not affected. But sometimes these methane gas bubbles can really do some serious damage. Now, one source of mine said that some of this dead birds flocks that have been noticed around the Arkansas area a couple times, they believe there's a possibility that could have been some of that methane bubble come up out of there, and eventually it floats into the atmosphere and dissipates. But it takes years for this. But they know that there's one huge bubble down there right now. Inside the Gulf of Mexico, that's the reason no fish can live in it. That's one of the reasons it has forced many of the sharks, many of the fish, and other things since that spill up on the East Coast, clear up into New York. So they've run the Gulf of Mexico. And the other parts of that Gulf of Mexico, Deborah Dupree, a friend of mine, she writes for the Examiner. I had talked to her initially on this, gave her some insight to it. She's published a book on it. She's found like 3,000 deaths of people eating fish out of the Gulf of Mexico, because and massive amounts of children dying in their mother's wombs as a result of eating fish out of the Gulf. So they've done some very serious damage, and it's amazing that the United States government and the New World Order who controls our Justice Department, did not put these people in jail for what they have done. Instead, they let them off with a couple $1 billion fine or whatever it was, and they go in there and do a spin doctor game with a former spin doctor attorney saying that we will anybody damaged put the claim in and all this other. So they try to buy off and shut up people along the Gulf. But there's a bigger equation to this. There's a huge sinkhole in Louisiana, and that sinkhole goes right to the top of that thing. That meaning out there south of New Orleans, where they have that oil well, that we call it the oil itself, ran straight north up to where the sinkhole is, the tip of the New Madrid Fault, which is that fault line in Missouri that ran backwards in the late 1800s, I believe it was, or mid 1800s, and they found salt water in Omaha going up the Missouri River, where the Mississippi and Missouri come together north of St. Louis. But that because of an earthquake, it ran backwards. It was that strong of a fault that shakes every day around a 2.0 to 3.5 in Missouri, and if California ever goes off, or that Missouri goes off, California goes off, the fault lines, and New York goes off, and we got a huge problem here in our country in the way of an earthquake. But that oil runs from that fault line where the sinkhole is, down out into the Gulf of Mexico, then it runs almost straight east across and wraps around the tip of Florida. What I find interesting is because they sucked all that oil out of there, a 10-year supply, and now we got all that water filling back in. We got the movement of the earth back in there. I'm asking myself, if you remember somebody, their homes and 3 homes sunk, one guy in his own home sunk in Florida here about a month ago, and I'm asking myself, could that have been part of it because of that oil extraction? There's a very high probability. Let's move on to the next subject, HAARP, the weather wars. You talked about the tornado last night. Now, that is not the only tornado yesterday around 3 o'clock in Oklahoma, but the day before, 2 days ago, they had 2 tornadoes, one in the northwest, one in the southwest. And that did devastation and damage, killed a lot of people, wiped out 2 whole subdivisions the day before. Then yesterday, this thing went for 20-some-odd miles, 22 miles or whatever it is, a 2-mile-wide tornado, one of the largest F5s they've ever seen, and it goes and wipes out more. Now, Moore obviously is in a spot because prior to HAARP being all cranked up, Moore got hit back in 1999. But remember, this HAARP is weather wars. They're able to do things with it. You have to go back. Who created HAARP? That was Robert Anderson, who was a front buffer cutout for Daddy Bush and Leonard Millman in Argo Oil, who created this HAARP design, got it from alien technology. What are they doing getting this from alien technology, being private citizens, number one? And number two, why is it that DARPA took it over and bought this from them after they set these towers up, set the Alaskan HAARP project up, set the towers up in various parts of the world? And what is it that the United States government would turn around and buy this from them after they had created the technology? But yet, if you understand who DARPA under the Department of Defense is run by, it's gangsters. It's been people in the past like Iran-Contra gangster, killer, murderer, drug dealer, Admiral John Poindexter, who was outed, who Daddy Bush gave a presidential pardon to in December of 1992. And then, of course, he turns around and comes back in the George W. Bush administration until he got outed. And if you remember, he changed the logo at DARPA. And the logo was an all-seeing eye off in the distance, Lucifer, overseeing the planet. And it sent everybody totally ballistics in 2002 when he came out with this logo. And it was on the front pages of newspapers across the United States. The all-seeing eye and, overseeing the earth and so on and so forth. These are the people running HAARP, and they're doing weather wars. And I've been told by people inside the government that are high up in the know. I mean, I know people that if I mention their names, they'd be killed tomorrow. But if I mention their names, people would recognize their names on this program right here and now. And I can tell you this, they're telling me that because I was one of the first to ever report the fact that they moved the jet stream. and they moved it down and over Oklahoma and clear to the Gulf of Mexico, and this was in 2006, I believe it was, or 2008, and they moved it, and 6 months later, the same source gave Jesse Ventura for his program, which he did a masterpiece, in my opinion, about weather wars and how they can move HAARP around, cause earthquakes, cause the jet stream to move around, and so forth. Jet streams run east and west, basically, maybe like a snake, but they don't dip down the way they're doing it. And if you watch the Weather Channel, and you watch weather.com, and you watch where they're reporting on the jet stream or your local weather news in the evening, they will usually show you the jet stream. It is always coming off the Alaskan HAARP, and it dips down from that point. Why isn't it running normally from east to west across the Pacific? Instead, it is always coming off of Alaska. It's because that's the location of the main HAARP equipment, and so they're using this. And I find this interesting that if you look at what has transpired, they're dipping this thing down. They've got it dropping down on the west side of the Rockies. It's coming back up over the central United States. And all they're doing is now tipping this slightly, and they've angled it first. It was in Minnesota. Now they're angling this thing, the jet stream, up toward Chicago today, and they're taking the brunt of the damage up across there, and they'll be going right over into the northeast. Let's move to the next one. The attack on Monsanto. You're very correct about Monsanto. That this company needs to be shut down, putting in fertilizer, a form of their genetically engineered product. It is destroying mankind. You know, European nations will not even buy U.S. food. They refuse to buy our food because they know it's genetically engineered, and they've been refusing for 10 years to buy our food crop. And these people are the same people. If you go back to the corporate structure, you'll find the corporations controlled by Daddy Bush, Leonard Millman, the ones at Larry Mizell, Kissinger, and others, the same ones. They're on this Council of 13, which are 12 men who go and do their satanic sacrifices to Satan and worship Satan, who the 13th on the seat is Satan himself. Appears before them at their little sacrifices where they kill little babies and drink their blood and commit murder, and nobody shuts them down. These are the problems that we're up against. They have no regard for human life. I'm convinced that the Council of 12 are possessed by fallen angels myself. I mean, they become so evil, possessed by demons. I believe that they themselves become possessed and allow possession by fallen angels that so many people think are aliens. And when we go and look at Syria now, the same people, Leonard Millman, secretly went with, and it was announced, and it's on my site right now, it was announced, ironically, in the Colorado Statesman. I picked up on it after I got word that Mizell and Millman had been over there. I picked up on it. It's up on my website, and it's right under Intel. It's right below Intel Drop. It says Mossad, excuse the expression, BIT blank HS, destroying America, Lynn Millman and Larry Mizell. And it shows that these people went to Israel recently, went and met with Bibi Netanyahu in a private dinner, spent over an hour with him, reported by the Colorado governor who went with him, who's Larry's new sidekick, and Leonard, 3 unnamed parties. One of them was Leonard Millman. Now, they're going over there for what purpose? They're going over there to start a war worldwide. They're going over there to dictate to Bibi Netanyahu because Bibi Netanyahu answers to him. This is the Zionist Jewish mob in America. Daddy Bush's partners that have robbed, looted this country, committed treason and sedition against the United States of America, insurrection. These people need to be brought to justice. And they think they're going to go over there, and they think they're going to start a war with Syria and Iran. They're crazy. Now, Russian warships are being dispatched and are pulling into the Mediterranean as we speak. And there's a tremendous amount of force that's going to be brought in there. They have the capability of knocking the crap out of Israel and putting them in their place because Israel's become a bully. Israel is the problem that we have. And I'm not going to point the finger at the Jewish people, that is the Israeli people. It's their leadership. E.B. Netanyahu, who was educated at MIT, who was Romney's school buddy at MIT. Romney, the drug dealer, the one that did not make his presidency, who was caught delivering narcotics bank accounts from Afghanistan and from Iraq drugs, was caught down in Cuba with his KGB mistress while he was running for president of the United States this past fall. Up on Veterans Today, they have a picture of him getting off the airplane, holding the KGB daughter's hand, his lover. They have U.S. intelligence, military intelligence, has him on camera having sex with her in a hotel room. They have him delivering bank accounts to my former father-in-law, who faked his death and has even filed illegally before the courts death certificates, and he's living in Cuba. So he's committed frauds upon the court. These same people are all named in a U.S. intelligence report. 16 intelligence agencies filed their reports last fall. Actually, it was done, I believe, in late August, early September. They have shown up on the radar screen 4 times in various intelligence agencies' reports since 2004, pointing the finger at Leonard Millman, my former father-in-law, at Larry Mizell, at Daddy Bush, at George W. Bush, Jeb Bush, and Neil Bush, along with the Clintons and others, committing treason and sedition against the United States of America, involving the Oklahoma City bombing, involving 9/11 attack on America, involving robbing and looting this country by creating these artificial mortgages of nearly $100 trillion that they have derivatized, which they're saying now could be as high as $5,000 trillion. They're estimating it possibly at $5,000 trillion coming out of U.S. intelligence that has robbed and looted the world, that this 1%, these people, control America, only controlled 20% of the economy in 81. Now they're in control of 97% of all businesses, the economy in the United States, and controlling 90 to 95% of the economy worldwide. So with that said, and the situation with Israel trying to create war, nobody wants any war. It was Hillary, Daddy Bush, the Halliburton boys, the mercenaries for hire, along with the Israeli Mossad, run by their partner, Bibi Netanyahu, that has been creating the animosity, the tension, the wars in the Middle East in various countries called the rebels. They are the ones. There was a guy who was arrested a month ago here in the United States that was ex-military for hire, that was arrested for treason and sedition against the United States for his roles and actions for trying to pull us into a war in Syria with Israel as a result of him being over there fighting with the quote-unquote rebels. So others, that ex-military, those rogues for hire, CIA types and others, if they think that they're going to come back to the United States and they're caught on camera back coming into our country now, since we have a new head of the Department of Defense, honest patriot Chuck Hagel, and honest patriot Mr. Dempsey, General Dempsey, they're crazy, because they will be arrested for treason and sedition at this point as well. But the point is this has been this global elite who is over there trying to cause the war with Syria and the war with Iran right now, along with Israel. And that's not going to happen. And I might add, our U.S. Senate, certain senators, those Israeli senators, such as Feinstein, such as John McCain, Senator McCain, who's had a presidential pardon for his treason and sedition. Songbird McCain, that spent time in Vietnam as a prisoner, who never was a prisoner. He was sent inside of a hotel against special equipment, getting fed quite well for giving away secrets to the Vietnamese after he was shot down in Vietnam. And he came back. He was charged with treason and sedition. And his admiral father went to Richard Nixon and got him a presidential pardon. Now, then he becomes a U.S. senator.
Hold on,
now,
take a breath. Take a breath here, Stu. You're talking about McCain's father, the one that caused the Air Force to stand down when the Israelis attacked the USS Liberty, that was also at the orders of our other Jewish president, Lyndon Baines Johnson.
That's an interesting one. I didn't know his father was the admiral at the time that gave the order, but yes, it was the Israelis who attacked the USS Liberty. And so, you know, we've had this problem with these Zionists, and it goes back to Meyer-Lansky boys. Way back, you mentioned it earlier. It goes back to them and the Jewish mob since World War II. And who was Meyer-Lansky's accountant? It was Leonard Millman, my former father-in-law. That was it. I believe they called it the Tropicana Hotel at the time. I believe that was the one. And got Bugsy Siegel ratted out. He ratted him out. They're using money that was supposed to be on the construction of that hotel. Instead, he was using it for his girlfriends in Hollywood. Was to make movies and different stuff, and a lot of money went through that. Well, as a result, that's what got big brownie points with what they call the Commission, the Council of 13, the Commission. It's referred to as well. That's why I got big brownie points with Leonard Millman and his start in the crime syndicate. You know, they come from generational Satanism, and then they find them slut. And Leonard Millman's father, Lou Millman, was partners with Prescott Bush during World War II when Prescott Bush got charged by the United States with trading with the enemy by supplying money to Adolf Hitler to buy tanks and trucks during World War II.
Well, that's what they do. Let me take a breath here, Stu, and hold on just a minute, because this is what they do, folks. The Russian people have never been our enemy. The Tsar was our friend. The Tsar backed us. And what they did, they murdered the Tsar. The bankers financed the whole Bolshevik Revolution. They sent Marx and Lenin over there on a train. They murdered the Tsar, and here they gave us the Federal Reserve. Now, even Kennedy tried to go against these banksters, and he was murdered too. I've got somebody I've just invited on my show. He's got a book out, and in the first chapter of that book, he's got this. I want to share it with you because it really relates to the information that Stu has been giving you over the last half hour. And since it is my show, I do have to put in something now and then, but you need to share this, folks. Kennedy warned us about a conspiracy so vast, and even the head of the FBI, Hoover, he warned about it too. This book came across. I'm going to make it. This will be available next week to you. It's called The Secret Covenant. An illusion it will be, so large, so vast, it will escape their perception. Those who will see it will be thought of as insane. We will create separate fronts to prevent them from seeing the connection between us. We will behave as if we are not connected to keep the illusion alive. Our goal will be accomplished one drop at a time, so as to never bring suspicion upon ourselves. This will also prevent them from seeing the changes as they occur. We will work together always and will remain bound by blood and secrecy. Death will come to he who speaks. We will keep their lifespan short and their minds weak while pretending to do the opposite. We will use our knowledge of science and technology in subtle ways so they will never see what is happening. We will use soft metals, aging accelerators, and sedatives in food and water, also in the air. They will be blanketed by poisons everywhere they turn. The poisons will be hidden in everything that surrounds them, and what they drink, eat, breathe, and wear. We will create medicine that will make them sicker and cause other diseases, for which we will create yet more medicine. We will render them docile and weak before us by our power. Their minds belong to us, and they will do as we say. If they refuse, we will find ways to implement mind-altering technology into their lives. We will use fear as our weapon. We will establish their governments and establish opposites within. We will own both sides. They will perform the labor for us, and we shall prosper from their toil. Their families will never, our families will never mix with theirs. Our blood must be pure always, for it is the way. We will make them kill each other when it suits us. If we keep them separated from the oneness by dogma and religion, we will control all aspects of their lives and tell them what to think and how. We will guide them kindly and gently, letting them think they are guiding themselves. We will foment animosity between them through our factions. When a light shall shine among them, we shall establish it. We shall extinguish it by ridicule or death, whichever suits us best. We will make them up, rip each other's hearts apart, and kill their own children. We will bathe them in their own blood and kill their neighbors for as long as we see fit. We will benefit greatly from this, for they will not see us, for they cannot see us. We will continue to prosper from their wars and their deaths. We will make them live in fear and anger. We will use all their tools we have to accomplish this. The tools will be provided by their labor. If we will make them hate themselves and their neighbors, we will always hide the divine truth from them, that we are all one. This they must never know. Drop by drop, we will advance our goal. We will take over their land, resources, and wealth to exercise total control over them. We will deceive them into accepting laws that steal what little freedom they will have. We will establish a money system that will imprison them forever, keeping them and their children in debt. When they shall band together, we shall accuse them of crimes and present a different story to the world, for we shall own all the media. When they rise up against us, we will crush them like insects, for they are less than that. They will be helpless to do anything, for they will have no weapons. We will recruit some of them to carry out our plans. We will promise them eternal life, but eternal life they will never have, for they are not of us. The path will be hidden, the truth will be hidden in their face, so close they will not be able to focus on it until it's too late. Oh yes, so grand the illusion of freedom will be that they will never know they are our slaves. When it is all in place, the reality we have created for them will own them. Their minds will be bound by their beliefs, the beliefs we have established from time immemorial. But if they ever find out they are our equal, we shall perish then. This they must never know. If they ever find out that together they can vanquish us, they will take action. They must never, ever find out what we have done, for if they do, we shall have no place to run. No one shall give us shelter. This is the secret covenant by which we shall live the rest of our present and future lives, for this reality will transcend many generations and lifespans. The covenant is sealed by blood, our blood. And let me remind you what John F. Kennedy said, that the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. We are as a people inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. The high office of the president has been used to foment a plot to destroy America's freedom. Before I leave office, I must inform the citizen of this plight. Stu, where did that come from? What does that mean? Who are they that would put this in writing, put this and This is exactly what is happening to us right now. Would you agree?
Yeah, I will agree. And this is what they call Zionism. These are the fake Jews, the one that it talks about in the Bible. In specific, I believe it's in Revelations. Let me find it real quick. It's in the book of Revelation.
Beware the Jews that say they are Jews but are not. They are of the synagogue of Satan.
You got that right. Now, these are the people that call themselves the Council of 13. And the ones that I've identified after 30 years, and it's been very difficult to identify these people because they're so in secret, has been my ex-in-law, Leonard Bowman of Denver, who's hiding out in Cuba now. Larry Mizell, his buffer. They call them fronts, cutouts, whatever. They finance them. They become their buffers. And when they grow to be so super strong like Larry Mizell had and do enough murders and enough theft and enough deception and all the other stuff and treason and sedition, they move them up in the ranks, and if they don't have sons, they become the replacement. Mizell became the replacement for Millman when he faked his death so he wouldn't be on the radar scope. And then you have those two who serve on the council currently. You have Daddy Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, Henry Kissinger and Associates. These people are all the ones I'm naming are all in the U.S. except for Melman. He's hiding out in Cuba. You have David Rockefeller. You have his brother at one time, Lawrence Rockefeller, was the kingpin of the Rockefeller family. People were unaware of that. He was very hidden, like Millman was very hidden. You have Grace of Grace and Company. It was William Grace. His brother took over. His brother tells the Queen of England and Charles, Prince Charles, what to do, among others. You have Meyer Rothschild, who's headquartered out of New York, uses another name. It sounds like a Chinese name he actually uses for a lot of his illegal stunts that he does, and corporations. And you have the Warburg family. Those are the ones that I've got identified. But I've also been told that in the council you have the Europeans, you have the Orientals, and then you have the American Templar bankers who serve directly underneath this council of 13. And there is one story that has identified, and I give credit to Dr. Preston James, Veterans Today author, who has done a masterpiece on this. And it's called Kingpins, Aliens, Cutouts, Hybrids, I think it is. It's on my internet site. It's on Veterans Today as well. But if you go to StuWebb.com, I intentionally put it up because I've never seen anybody write a masterpiece like this. This was a description of the food chain of this new world order. And it basically, if you were to take your dollar bill out of the back of your pocket, and you would look at the back of it, you know, the all-seeing eye, Lucifer, the pyramid on the back of the Federal Reserve note, which is a private bank these same people own and control, and the European Central Bank they own and control. They print money out of thin air and loan everybody else. This big fictitious fraud that got killed, one of the things that got Kennedy killed, among others. But if you look at that story, you look at the back of the dollar bill, the all-seeing eye is Lucifer. The first layer in the pyramid, directly underneath the capstone, they call it, is the Illuminati 12. And then underneath that is the Illuminati bankers, those that they have put in control of these corporations and down the structure. But there are 12 families worldwide controlling the United States of America and the rest of the countries throughout the world and the governments, because they have put people, especially since World War II was the overthrow, the final leg, should we say, when they created the OSS, the Brown Shoe Boys. Remember this. This is something been very secret for years and years and years. The 79 of them, who they called the Brown Shoe Boys, who later became the OSS. Spun out the OSS in secret, that later became the CIA head chiefs. And then when they created the CIA Criminals in Action, it was over with. They created the Olympic cartel first. and that was Daddy Bush and Kissinger were both, and Kissinger was a dual agent acting in World War II against the United States of America. He was a Nazi as well as working for the German government and the Russian government. Commit espionage against the United States, and they sucked him into the OSS. He defected, they sucked him in, and later he becomes Secretary of State, ironically. You had Daddy Bush becomes the President of the United States. You have many other people, Alan Dulles, who was among them, who Kennedy fired before, just days before his death, and then he heads up the Warren Commission to do the obstruction of justice and the spin doctor on the death of the president after they murdered the president, John F. Kennedy, and the list goes on. But this brown shoe boys, they call them, were the ones that took over, as an example, Howard Hughes Corporation, moved Howard Hughes out of business, should we say, set up his headquarters. And I'll tell you where his headquarters was, and most people don't know why Howard Hughes was sitting around, because Howard Hughes was on the, and he created a lot of things, and his corporation was very effective, and they had to take it away from him. So they got him all hooked on heroin at the time, and they did it through some chick, as a story I've heard personally from super old spooks, how they did it. But Howard Hughes' headquarters in Las Vegas, Nevada, was at Flamingo and Spencer. And there's what's called the Dawson Building. It was Jerry Henderson, who was one of the comptrollers, should we say, that ran Grumman Aerospace Company. His office was on the 5th floor, underground. Howard Hughes was on the 4th level, underground. And there's a secret underground house over there that I've had on my website. If you go to Jerry Henderson on archives at the top of my site, scroll down to it's in alphabetical order. You go to Jerry Henderson. You can see a picture of that underground house. It was a big cavern, and he would pull his car up on top of there. His level rocks would part, and he would pull up there as a super spook. And they would park and drop his car down in there. And I've had friends who slept in the guest house. There were 2 houses built in that cabin. One was a $6,000 house, and the kitchen was all pink because his wife liked pink tile and white tile. And they had a guest house, a 1,600 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath guest house. And there were no windows. That is, they had the windows, but there was no glass inside there. He had a putting green in there, and the whole bit, golf course, or a putting green, and a hot tub, and a waterfall. And it's quite famous. Since his death, Henderson's death in 1987, they began around the 2000 time frame. The attorneys that took over the corporation and took over everything he had, which he was basically national security, part of the national security of the United States. And he was handed the Howard Hughes stuff from the Bushes, who had Howard Hughes at bay at the time. And Henderson was quite different in his own way. He was more patriotic. He wasn't a treasonous punk. But when the guy died, he had $3.2 trillion in the Dawson Bank in gold in Switzerland, the only bank where he was the only customer of the bank. And when this guy dies, everything went into the Bush's hands and control, including the Hughes Corp. And now you see Daddy Bush's attorney, Baker, who did this treason and sedition with the Supreme Court, was down there in Florida when they were trying to, do all the treason and sedition in the 2000 election, take it before the Supreme Court. Baker, former Secretary of State that committed treason and sedition against the U.S. You'll find him, the Baker Hughes Corporation now. But, this goes way back. I could talk history lessons all day long. What history should be written about after 30 years, I have people these days, and it's not bragging by any means. I'm honored to have them say this. They call me up. Super spooks call me up, and they call me doctor now because they say, Stu, you've got a Ph.D. from the Milman Bush University of Crime. So they refer to me as the doctor because they tried to kill me so many times because Daddy Bush says Stu Webb's library card expired. And the metaphor is a sick metaphor for saying we're going to kill his ass because he knows too much.
They have made attempts on your life, as they have mine too.
They got you in that motorcycle. They got me in three car crashes in one year, and one of them was a rollover on the freeway at 65 miles an hour on the concrete barrier on my head. And that wasn't a pleasant thing in a van. Broke my neck in 6 places, and I'm still going to a doctor, a chiropractor, as a result of that, and 2 more 1 year later, and a customer's house burned down. I can never go back. I used to build houses. I could get construction loans. And as soon as I married the witch doctor, Leonard Nolan's daughter, my construction loans were cut off when I was in my mid-20s. And after that, it was when I was living in Dallas. I live in Kansas City and met her here, but had moved there because of economy. And then when I moved back here, and since that time, it's been, pretty much I've had to do it myself because they've ruined the economy so bad in the United States that I'm competing out here in the construction business, or was until a year and a half ago, when the doctors said you can't work anymore, Stu, because if you do, you're in trouble. You're going to be paralyzed possibly. And because I still have one of those vertebrae, all the bones were broken off the back of my neck that hold all the muscles and ligaments. Now, most of them are reattached, but they're not completely solid yet. One of them's broken off for life, the one that basically controls the muscles and so forth in the shoulders and the bottom of the neck. And I can't go swing a hammer anymore. I can't go paint a house anymore. I can't go pour a driveway anymore. I can't do these things. And that's one of the reasons I have a donate button up on my website, because I can't do these. And this is one of the reasons a year ago I started pushing the hell out of this again, or a year and a half ago, because they basically got me not paralyzed, but they've got me to where I'm competing against, Mexican people out here. Nothing against the Spanish people, but I'm competing where they're coming up from Mexico. Many of them are illegals and others, and I'm competing out here in the bidding process. And I can't afford to bid a house and pay someone else sub something out today, because everybody themselves are going out here competing in the labor force against this Mexican labor that's willing to do it for $6 an hour. And so it's nearly impossible for any contractor to go out here and even hardly make a profit these days. So they got me in a real bind, because I have to be back in pushing paper right now if I were to even make a buck. And I can't make a buck pushing paper right now because of this economy.
Well, I've got to tell you, folks, this is the way they work. They go after all forms of financing. I mean, when my accident happened on May 20th, 2004, I had 2 magazines going. I was publishing and printing 20,000 copies between the 2. And then the story broke in the New York Times. Actually, it was running the building number 7 on the cover and referring to it on the air as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning, and which is exactly what it was. I mean, you rent the buildings for $500 million, then you plant the explosives in it, you blow them up, you insure them, but for a few billion, and then you collect 3 months later. I mean, what else could that be? And they, in April is when the story broke in the New York Times about the NSA being allowed to tap everybody's phones. Well, folks, NSA didn't tap anybody's phones. They subbed it out, farmed it out to Amdocs and Converse, 2 Israeli-based companies that started tapping all of our phones here. Probably tied to the whole Echelon project. And on May 20th, I called home to ask my son, where do you need me to go next? 30 minutes later, I was being rushed to the hospital. They knew exactly where I was going to be. They had someone waiting for me who never went to jail, who didn't have insurance, and I spent 3 months in the hospital. They killed every source of income that I had. They're still trying to do that. So when I come on, and when I do this show, folks, I'm not asking for just donations. Although, you think about this, Stu. At the last presidential election, and I've been involved in presidential politics, you never heard of Charles Collins, because every time Charles got up to speak, every cameraman on stage from every network cut their cameras off, pointed them at the ground, and took a smoke break. You never saw Collins for president.
I remember Charles. I supported him. He was very patriotic.
He was. He was trying to point out we can buy back the Federal Reserve for $500 million, wipe out a $16 trillion debt, and that's doubled now. But nobody ever heard of him. Just like nobody heard about, Ross Perot was threatened. You know, Kennedy was killed for wanting to go against the banks. And the best shot we had for president was Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico, who backed the militias, who would have legalized marijuana. And matter of fact, he would abolish all the laws against victimless crimes, which is what needs to happen. Now, my guest is Stu Webb. We're going to take a break, warm up the coffee, and come right back with more.
We'll be right back after this message.
Latvia will remain a dictatorship. Oh, be quiet. Why are you guys so anti-dictators? Imagine if America was a dictatorship. You could let 1% of the people have all the nation's wealth.